Hey, what is going on, guys? Weevil YouTube here, back with another video. And there's been plenty of news of late, most notably the re-release of Levier the Sea Dragon, which is really amazing. And of course, that immediately got me thinking about Atlanteans. One of my favourite decks, or what will become one of my favourite decks when they are finally released in a couple of weeks' time. I'm actually really excited about this. I'm going to be buying 3 of the structure deck. Unfortunately, I won't be able to build the current build you see on screen until the Mermail engine comes out for that deck, as well as Moon Glacia, the Elemental Lord. Nevertheless, I wanted to provide you with some tools with which you can make the best possible Atlantean deck you can, what I call the power plays of the deck. As if you guys don't know already, I mean, Atlanteans are extremely popular on Dueling Network. I see them all the time. So, with that in mind, let us get into the deck. So, we have 1 copy of Moon Glacia, the Elemental Lord, 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Megalo. Oh, by the way, I did do a deck profile of Atlanteans before, but it was way before I actually considered their potential with Abyss Spheres and stuff like that. So that's why this is the second deck profile of that kind. Anyways, Atlantean Heavy Infantry, a card which was renamed, which in my opinion should not have been. 2 copies of Atlantean Marksman, 1 copy of Atlantean Attack Squad, 3 copies of Deep Sea Diva, what I would call the MVP of the deck, 3 copies of Atlantean Dragoons, 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Pike, also pretty much an MVP of the deck. 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Linda, 2 copies of Genex Birdman, which I really want to put at 3, but unfortunately I can't. So there's just not enough space, really. Plus I wanted to keep the monster count at 20 and not kind of push it above that. 2 copies of Polyduality. Unfortunately, it's now down to 2, but I did like running it at 3, of course, when it was still at 3. But it was sort of a virtual world, because I never would have got to run it at 3, because the ban list would have always put it at 2. Dark Hull, Heavy Storm, Monster Reborn. Heavy Storm because it made it look like I have a decent amount of back row, but the Abyss Spheres disappear quite quickly, so I never really get to keep them on the field for very long. The Deep Prisons also disappear rather quickly, as do the Trench Tributes and the Compulses, so it's not that big of an issue. There's plenty of times when I want to use Heavy Storm and push for a game. 2 copies of Salvage, 2 copies of Forbidden Lance, and 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Salvage is just absolutely amazing. If you top deck it, and you get like a Diva and a Marksman back, for example, you still have something in the deck you can bring out with Diva, and you can go into like a level 8 Synchro or whatever, depending on what you have in the field, of course. As for the traps, we have 2 copies of Dimensional Prison, 2 copies of Torrential Tribute, 3 copies of Abyss Sphere, and 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. So, this deck clearly combos around Abyss Sphere. So, the ultimate power plays in this deck are as follows. And, in my opinion, they should be the power plays in any Atlantean deck whatsoever. They basically all revolve around Deep Sea Diva. And it is actually an OTK if you manage to get a Deep Sea Diva and a Genex Birdman, in your opening hand. The play would go as follows. You would normal summon Deep Sea Diva, you would activate the effect of Deep Sea Diva, special summoning a Atlantean Heavy Infantry from your deck, in defense mode, obviously, or else that would be crazy. Then you use the effect of Genex Birdman, bouncing the Deep Sea Diva back to your hand to special summon the Genex Birdman. You then have a Birdman and a Heavy Infantry on the field. You would then normal summon your Deep Sea Diva again, activate its effect again, and bring out an Atlantean Marksman, or an Atlantean Heavy Infantry again, depending on what you want to do. Then you basically have 4 monsters with which you can do pretty much anything you want. You can overlay the Diva and the Infantry into a Gachi, for example, or into a Daigusto Phoenix, like a 3000 beater. You can synchro the Diva with the Marksman into an Allied Justice Cataster, which would be at 2600 attack because of the the Gachi. So it's kind of a defensive. That could be a more defensive play. The overlay the Diva and the Infantry and synchro with the Marksman. However, the more offensive plays would obviously entail you could overlay the Marksman with the Genex Birdman, for example. And then you could overlay the Diva with the Heavy Infantry. It's not an OTK, fair enough, by any means. But it certainly sets you up practically for the whole duel. So there's, your opponent will obviously be able to come back from it eventually, but it just kind of sets you up nicely. You have a kind of a defensive wall in the, in Gachi that you basically won't be able to get rid of. And then you can go into a level 5 Synchro, which they won't be able to attack over unless they happen to have a Dark Monster. So, it really kind of sets you up quite nicely. But of course, the best combo plays, in addition to Deep Sea Diva, which are just amazing anyway, come from the likes of Mermail Abyss Pike, But this sort of stuff you would know already, but you would normal summon Abyss Pike. You would discard either heavy infantry, marksmen, or dragoons. With dragoons, for me, is like another MVP of the deck. It's just so amazing. You would discard dragoons, and then you would get 2 searches from Abyss Pike. You'll be able to search up an Abyss Linda or an Atlantean marksman, as well as any other sea serpent in your deck. This includes Glacia, the Elemental Lord. So you'll basically be able to search him up if you have 5 water monsters in your grave already, and then special summon it immediately and get its effects, discarding 2 random cards out of your opponent's hand. This guy is the only reason why I don't run Poseidra. Poseidra is good, and if Glacia didn't exist, I would probably have Poseidra in the deck, but because Glacia is around, I have to run Glacia. He's just so much better. It is possible, it is entirely possible and not unreasonable to think that you can get 5 water monsters in your grave in 1 turn. I mean, it happens to me all the time. It's just ridiculous. The reason is because you're not XYZing nearly as much as you are synchro summoning. As you can see down below, the synchro monsters that I have are Alliage's Cataster, Dularan. I'm actually thinking of upping him to 2. People might think Dularan, of course, not nearly as good as Brionic, obviously. But Brionic is gone now, so Dularan I use to... Let me think of an example. For example, you go into your standard first turn Diva play, and you have a Marksman and a Genex Birdman on the field. You will sink into a Dularan. You won't touch the Diva or the heavy infantry. I was about to say armsman. And you bounce them back to your hand to use again. The boost of attack points to Dularan is irrelevant. All you want to do is to get stuff back to your hand to reuse. You still have a 2000 attack monster on the field, which isn't too bad. And then you might have a couple of back rows which you can set. Which brings me on to my next point, which is the power of Abyss Sphere. I never really considered this card all that good because it clearly said that the effects on the monster were negated. But of course, that refers only to face-up effects and not to effects which activate in the graveyard, which Abyss Lindas do. So what you would more than likely do, as soon as you get this card set face down and your opponent doesn't MST it in the end phase of that turn, you're pretty much set. You're pretty much guaranteed an Abyss Megalo unless they use Solemn Warning or something else to stop it. So what you would do is you would set this face down, you would wait, you wouldn't activate it. There's no point in activating it unless you're pushing for game or something and you need a monster on the field. But you always go for Abyss Linda. Always. Never go for Abyss Megalo, because this card is destroyed during the end phase of your opponent's next end phase, basically. And so if you activate it, he's just going to get destroyed, and it's going to be a complete waste. So what you do is, say it's their turn, and they decide to MST Abyss Sphere. So they MST it, you chain it, Abyss Linda comes out, MST resolves, Abyss Sphere is destroyed, therefore Abyss Linda is destroyed, and when she's destroyed, you can bring out Abyss Megalo. So it's basically, for their MST, it's actually nets as 0, because you lose a card and you gain a card. But it nets you a 2400 attack monster, which can attack twice, and it's just a boss. So I'm going to talk about Abyss Megalo next, actually, because a lot of people aren't a huge fan of him, just because it has been ruled, thus far, anyway, that if you pay his summoning condition, which was actually an ignition effect, by discarding 2 other water monsters, and your opponent activates Solemn Warning, those monsters never get their effects in the graveyard because they were never sent to activate an effect. They were only sent to the graveyard. So that is annoying. I mean, you could basically get net -2 of discarding 2 monsters, summoning the Abyss Megalo, and getting his summon negated. But I mean, that's why, just be careful. Don't do it if you think your opponent is going to stop it. It's very rare that I'll use that, effect of Abyss Megalo to special summon him that way. I mean, I certainly won't tribute summon for him. But they have designed it that way because they made him level 7, which means if you're running any kind of Umi or anything like that, he'll become level 6 and you'll be able to use him. The other great thing about Abyss Megalo, which people seem to forget about, is the fact that when you special summon him via the effect of Abyss Sphere with all that Abyss Linda stuff, you can search for another one and set it face down straight away. I mean, that's pretty amazing. It's actually an effect that I don't use all that often because I'm not sure if this is called Kraken, or it used to be called Abyss Crake. Abyss Scale, yeah? I'm not sure if a lot of people actually use this card anymore. But this was a card that I used to test out in the deck and used to search up with Abyss Megalo and immediately get him to 2800 attack points. But some of the best combos you can do with Abyss Megalo are you would discard Atlantean Dragoons and any other water monster, such as Marksman or Heavy Infantry, to special summon him. Assuming his summon doesn't get negated, you would then have a search for Deep Sea Diva. which you could then normal summon. For example, go into a whatever Atlantean marksman, use the effect of Abyss Megalo to tribute the marksman to pop their face down to attack twice. Yeah, I mean, sure, you'd have a face of Diva on the field, which wouldn't be able to do much of anything, and it's not the most ideal play. The other option is you could go into a marksman with Diva and tribute the Diva herself, attack with the marksman, get the effect of marksman, bring out the Atlantean attack squad, who would be a 2200, attack with that, and then attack with Abyss Megalo. And that's like a lot of damage. And then you'll be able to overlay the attack squad and the marksman in main phase 2 into a Leviathan Dragon, detach marksman, pop a face down card. Although, you know, just basically be a troll. So those are the sorts of combos that you can do with Abyss Megalo. People, you know, underestimate the versatility of this card, basically. As I said, they especially forget about the thing that when he's summoned, you can add one Abyss Spell or Trap card from your, to your hand, which is amazing. Anything that pulls stuff from the deck is amazing. As for other combos, the only other ones that are kind of worthy of note are getting 5 water monsters in the grave for Moon Glacia, the Elemental Lord. The easiest way to do that is that first turn Deep Sea Diva play. You go Deep Sea Diva into heavy inventory, and then bounce Diva for Birdman, summon the Diva again. This would actually get you 4 water monsters in your grave if you did it correctly. Because, of course, the Genex side Birdman is dark, and he would be banished anyway, even if he was a water monster, which he isn't. But it just sort of happens over time, and you just need to make sure that you have 5 water monsters, and you don't end up with more than 5 at the end of the turn. I mean, it's very easy to control your grave in this deck. I mean, okay, fair enough, you don't have anything that special summons from the graveyard, but you have 2 copies of Salvage, which can be used to return those water monsters back to your hand. So those are the sorts of power plays I was talking about. The main ones, again, for review, are the Abyss Sphere play, the first turn Deep Sea Diva play, the Moon Glacia play in general, the Abyss Megalo play if you discard an Atlantean Dragoons and you are able to search for Deep Sea Diva, the Abyss Pike, if you don't have anything else to do with your turn, you can simply normal summon Abyss Pike and plus off it by discarding an Atlantean Dragoons. So those are the sorts of things. And if you're stalling, just set the likes of your D-Prisons, your Trancho Tributes, and your Compulsories. Compulsories because there are XYZs that Atlanteans like to get over, like Zen-mains and stuff. They like to be able to attack directly. They like to be able to like battle damage and so forth. That is why I also main 2 copies of Forbidden Lance. But anyway, guys, the video is short and sweet, as I've said. Take a look at the rest of my extra deck. That is the sort of stuff I will probably be running in my extra deck when the deck is finally released. Bahamut Shark, of course, isn't out yet, so I would more than likely replace him with, as I put here, a Utopia or a Maestro. And, you know, don't underestimate the power of Atlanteans. I think they're going to be, maybe not too competitive, maybe not tier 1, but they'll certainly be a fun deck to play. And I am probably going to bring these guys to Barcelona, YCS Barcelona, in December. So, because I'm just kind of sick of all the decks that are around right now. I have a full wind-up deck, you know, Chaos Dragons, whatever else. I can run that deck if I want to, but I'd just rather run something that's new and fresh and exciting. And that's a particular kind of pet deck of mine. I've always liked Atlanteans ever since I saw them first on Dueling Network. I just think they have a nice kind of synergy about them, and a kind of a swarming capability. But anyway, guys, I'm going to leave the video there. Thank you so much for watching. As always, Moon Glacia is a boss. Build your deck around him. Don't build it around Poseidra. Be sure to comment, rate, and subscribe. As always, actually, before I finish, you can build your deck around Poseidra if you run more of kind of a monster match type build with like 40 water monsters. Then it's very, very easy to get monsters on the field, like Nimbles, for example. One of my friends is building a Nimble deck for Barcelona with all these water monsters and Poseidra and 3 copies of Moon Glacia. I mean, that's crazy, but it works. Anyway, guys, yeah. Comment, rate, subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'm YouTuber, and I am signing out. Peace.